I'm going to the homeland of this right here, Starbucks in Seattle. So I'm traveling across to the West Coast, which I haven't covered yet on Urbanist. But why did I choose Seattle? So I've always been fascinated by how Starbucks got its start, considering it was a New Yorker who went over to Seattle to work for coffee roasters, then took a trip to Italy, was super inspired by Italian coffee culture, then went back to Seattle, bought that company, and turned it into a global empire. So I'm excited to cover that story. But in this video, how do I choose specific cities? How do I book lodging? And also how do I book flights? And this is some kind of top secret knowledge of how do I best book flights. So let's go over to my desk. Let's go. All right, now that I'm comfy inside, I can show you the true secrets of how to choose the best places to visit. Very first one is choosing a city, which is the most crucial thing. I think cities is probably one of the better ways to travel around. You get more bang for your buck when you go to a great city. So how do you choose a good city? And there's three main things that I consider. A, the city is walkable. When walking around, from my own experience, you end up bumping into more interesting things. Chances of finding a new interesting restaurant, cafe, bakery increase. A bar, a drink. The chances of meeting people increase. Because generally when people are using their cars, they're going to a specific place and leaving that place to go to another specific place or to their home. In car-centric places, you rarely have the chance to kind of interact with the locals. In walkable cities, the chances are much higher. Seattle is one of the very few cities in the US that is truly walkable and with a robust public transit system. Second reason for choosing a city is that there has to be a mix between landmarks, attractions, and food. Seattle is one of those cities, from my understanding, that has kind of a mix of all those together while you're walking around, like New York does, like Boston does, like Washington, D.C. The third criteria is, and this is the most simpler one, it's relatively safe. You know how I look like, you know how tall I am, you know my build. Everyone's going to be different in how exactly they specifically feel safe. When it comes to travel, I prefer to just be relaxed. Some people travel in very adventurous circumstances, but it's not my favorite. But this also ties into live video. Live video, I feel that I can give you the best live video entertainment when I'm at ease. And to increase the chances of being at ease is, as I mentioned earlier, the knowledge that I can get to places, the knowledge that there'll be something to show, also the knowledge that I'll be okay. So those are the main three criteria as to why I choose a city. But there's a few sub criteria that are a little bit more specific to my situation. The other ones is cell phone reception. If you're just a normal tourist, cell phone reception, it doesn't matter too much. Generally, it's easy to buy a SIM card, especially if you need just a SIM card for a little bit of data, maybe to order Ubers or taxis, or to just use Google Maps. It's very easy to buy a simple SIM card in most places. For me, I need to buy large SIM cards, meaning a whole lot of cell phone data. I need like 100 gigabytes usually for a month worth of live video exploration. And I need places where I can generally have a consistent signal. Mexico City hits all the criteria for all the other things I just mentioned, but it kind of sucks in terms of cell phone reception. Of course, I have no doubt that Seattle will have good cell phone reception. It's one of the most expensive cities in the US, the center of two gigantic tech companies, Microsoft and Amazon. The other consideration is I can do day trips. Not all cities has accessibility to interesting day trips. And this was more evident in my European adventures, specifically in the UK and Ireland when I started really doing this a lot, is there are specific cities like Manchester in England. It was very easy to take day trips to other cool spots, either via public transportation or a bus tour that's organized. As I can stay in one lodging for like a week and still have a variety of different areas to see. So from Manchester, I was able to go to Sheffield, I was able to go to Liverpool, I was able to take a bus tour to north of Wales. I'm not sure too much about Seattle. Seattle, as far as I know, and stay tuned, has the San Juan Islands, so I can reach things by ferry. Potentially I could go to the other city like Tacoma or Spokane, maybe. I could do those places. We'll see. But there's other cities in the US that are very good for day trips. Las Vegas, you can easily go to to Grand Canyon via bus tour, or rent yourself a car and get there by car. There's also bus tours from Las Vegas to Hollywood, so you can see Hollywood for a day. The other thing is current events. And right now, there's two main things plaguing the world. It is unfortunately the pandemic and war in the Ukraine. So with the pandemic, it was one of the reasons why I chose to do US. The European countries that I want to do tend to still be very reactive to any surge in COVID. So I was considering France. But unfortunately, France tends to be very reactive and they could shut down at any moment and close a lot of the attractions. So it would be a financial risk for me to go to France and find myself in the position where everything's shut down. And also there's still a lot of COVID restrictions with France, Netherlands, Germany, many other countries around Europe. So I decided to do the US because the US is not so reactive when it comes to COVID. If anything happens, it'll probably take a while for things to fully shut down if it comes to that point. The other thing is war. Places I really want to go is Budapest, Turkey. I would love to show Poland. I would love to go to Finland. Budapest would have been easy right now because they have no restrictions with COVID. Romania, same thing. They took away all restrictions, but I can't take the risk. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of how to pick flights first. I go to flights.google.com. One thing I actually recommend initially, picking your trip time at least 2 weeks in advance because otherwise you'll be spending a whole lot of money. Say this is a spontaneous trip. I'm gonna pick April 18th and I'm gonna make it a month long. So I'll be there all the way until May 18th. And I leave where to blank. So here, we're gonna put one criteria. I recommend choosing flights for Monday or Tuesday. They tend to be the cheapest days. And put non-stop only. As I mentioned, if you live in one of these awesome cities with great airport connections, put non-stop only. Don't bother with layovers. The money really isn't worth it nowadays from what I've learned. You don't save too much. You may save $100, $200. It's not worth for the grief of trying to switch flights. So here we go to the US. In the US, we get to see a huge variety of different places we can visit, and we can kind of get a sense of how much things cost in what specific cities. The reason I recommend this is because you can actually get interesting ideas of where to travel. In the US, you can see that right now, Seattle's $468 round trip. Atlanta is only $278. So if you're really on a budget, you can go to Atlanta, but sometimes you'll find surprises. For example, here, let's see if we can go a little bit further down. You'll find out that going to like Colombia is only $657. So there are places that are pretty inexpensive that are more exotic from JFK Airport. And if we start going down to South America, we can see that Buenos Aires costs $970. But I think this is more important in Europe. And the reason for that is you can see taking a direct flight to a city that's not typically connected directly to like Manchester costs way too expensive. But let's say you want to visit both England and Paris. Here you can see that rather than flying to London, which is $800, you can fly into Paris instead, non-stop, and save yourself $200, which is the cost of the train ticket to get to between both places. And this is where you save money, because if you plan to go to a city that has easy train connections between other cities, choose the city to fly in that's the cheapest, and then you can hop around a lot easier. So here you can see that even if I were to go to Rome right now, it'll be better than flying to Milan, which is at $700. If I go to Rome, I can visit Rome, have a great time, maybe go up to Venice, and then end at Milan. And Milan is all close by train, so it is a better deal. And the other thing is to be aware with baggage. So when you choose your flights, make sure you put at least one carry-on bag, because some budget airliners don't include baggage, and it might look cheap, but then once you add a bag, it might be the same price or more expensive than the flight that already included a bag. So this is the kicker that I like about Google Flights. Not just the map, but this as well. So you click on the date, and we can see that the range of flights of from when to when will cost cheaper. So right now, flying the 18th is $729. But if I wanted to save nearly $100, I can fly on the 19th instead, and then I'll look at the range and see if I can go even cheaper. It's probably the cheapest I can go. I can fly on the 19th instead and save nearly $100, which is great. I mean, especially considering hotel and things like that. The other thing I would recommend is in terms of airliners, Delta right now, you can easily switch any flight. So I was able to switch my flights back in London the day before to later that afternoon because of COVID test was taking too long. Sometimes you do have to pay the difference, but the difference sometimes is either very low or the different flight might actually be cheaper and they give you credit. And then there's lodging. And there's two options you can usually do with lodging. You can A, stay in a hotel, or B, stay in an Airbnb. There's a bunch of other services. Let me know if you use any other ones. When I choose which is which, it depends on the city and it depends on the price. For example, in London, I would choose Airbnb, but I did find out that there was very good deals when it came to hotels. And this might sometimes feel rather counterintuitive. Sometimes the very expensive cities might have cheaper hotels than Airbnb, and sometimes it's vice versa. So when it comes to hotels, I usually go for business hotels, and the reason I do that personally is because they tend to be more comfortable and more modern than your classic hotel chains. They tend to have very good internet, which is very crucial for me because I'm working while traveling, posting videos, editing, researching. I'm doing a lot of things that requires an internet connection. And then there's Airbnbs. Airbnbs is very useful, especially in cities where there's like a central business district and the historical center is separate from that, like Rome or Paris too as well, where the hotels, especially the bigger brands, especially the ones that are going to be cheaper, are in the business district. And in business districts, everything tends to shut down by 7 p.m. There's no life after 7 p.m. I'm generalizing, of course, but that is the case with at least like Rome. But if you stay in more of the historical area, you're closer to the sites, you're closer to the landmarks, and you're closer to the food and drink. And you're closer to it being lively a little bit later at night. For example, in Rome, I stayed in the neighborhood of Prati. Prati does not have too many hotels, but it does have a whole lot of Airbnbs. And that neighborhood is close to Vatican City, close to any buses and metro to get to all the major sites, Colosseum and whatnot, and close to a whole lot of great restaurants, food, bakeries, cafes, anything and everything you wanted. This might apply to New York, for example. Yes, you can stay in Times Square, but if you really want to experience, say, more food and drink, or more local life, or more nightlife, then consider staying in the Airbnb in the East Village, Bushwick, Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Brooklyn. That's my thinking behind the two different lodgings. So Airbnb, let's use a random city as an example. I'm gonna use London. This is the first pro tip. You end up saving money, both for hotels and Airbnb, usually for stays that are longer than a week. So you end up getting a weekly discount. So if you stay in the span of a week, and sometimes it's in spans of month, you get a discount. And those discounts sometimes are really good. So you end up saving like $200, and that's end up saving like a night stay. London is going to be expensive, but I chose one guest, 2 weeks, and you're gonna see a map with a lot of choices. Let's go more towards central London. Or if you're on a budget, then it might be cheaper to stay in the outer skirts of the city. But of course you have to know that you have to travel using their metro system. In this case, I recommend having an entire place to yourself. Private rooms sometimes are cheaper, and that can be great if you're on the budget, but I like having the entire place to myself, so I use that criteria. We can zoom in for more of the expensive neighborhoods, and it's going to be expensive, like in Marylebone, it's going to be $300 a night minimum, but you see a lot of different places. If you're in a very popular location for Airbnb, the other thing you can check in filters, more options, you can click Superhost. Superhost, it depends on the city. In London, there's not that many. In Rome, there's a lot more. Superhost means someone who who's been hosting for a while and has great ratings. That's usually the Superhost criteria, but we're not going to do that. And we're going to put the price a little bit down. So we're going to spend less than 230. Let's see if we can get less than 230 in London. And the key is to A, choose a place with some reviews, and B, try to choose a place with higher than 4.5. And we don't see too many options here. Oh my God. London kind of sucks when it comes to Airbnbs. Okay, here we have a Airbnb in Bermondsey. Bermondsey is a great neighborhood. 4.8, $200 a night, which is expensive. You might save a little bit of money in the hotel. Weekly discount, $147. So you can see you save a little bit of money. Let's see the cancellation policy. The cancellation policy kind of sucks. You can only cancel within 48 hours. So if you book this by mistake, you have 48 hours to cancel it and get full refund. And we see the reviews, and the reviews really are enlightening as to the quality of the location. Here's very little reviews. So one thing you can see that the reviews mention how it's a great location, it's a clean space, and they mention that the person was easy to respond to. If there's very few reviews, you can click on the actual person. This is hosted by Omar in this case. And right over here, we can see he has 16 reviews. So he has reviews from other Airbnbs he used to have. And you can see this guy is pretty well rated. So this seems like to be a good Airbnb. And the other thing to watch out for is bed. Here in this case, you have one king bed and one sofa bed. That's very useful if you're going with more than 2 people, 3, 4, 5 people, if you're a family or going with a group of friends. There's Wi-Fi and there's washer, which is great here. And this seems to be overall a great place. And that's how I choose my Airbnbs. So some cities might be awesome, but the Airbnbs are just too expensive, or flying there is just too expensive. So I don't do them at the moment. I choose places within the budget. And there's some places that are better because my budget extends much further. And that is the case with at least Seattle, which is cool because I was able to find a very good place, which you'll see at the end of my trip. And then the other thing is I would recommend a site called Get Your Guide. It's my favorite site right now for finding day trips. Traveling is so much fun. I do recommend it. Make it easy on yourself. Don't hop around between city and city too much. This is the mistake I see a lot of people do. And I get a lot of people have very limited vacation time, especially here in the US. There's only about 2 weeks. In Europe, sometimes the general person has like a month of vacation time. I know it might be tight. I know you want to really spend that vacation time and go to as many cities as possible. But know yourself. If you're someone who actually does not like hopping around too much, who actually does not like going on too many planes, and if you don't quite have the budget, don't do it. It's okay to go to 1 or 2 cities rather than 4, 5, 6 cities in the span of a month. Don't overwhelm yourself when traveling. That's the best advice I can give you. The one final thing is books. If you're someone like me who really likes their history, I tend to choose books either about a specific story of a place. In this case, I'm reading a little bit of the Starbucks story. Not the full thing because this goes into too much detail that I really don't need. I like the DK Eyewitness books for travel. These guys are really, really good. The cool thing is that they cover not just the main sites, but they also tell you a little bit about the history. They have very good, clear maps. They tend to focus a lot about the landmarks and the history that you can see, which the other guidebooks veer a little bit more on the practical end and tell you about the hotels and the restaurants. I really don't care about that. I want to know about the sites. And then sometimes I find the quirky sites of places. So I try to find books about haunted or about secrets. Seattle doesn't have too many books about it. So this is one of the few books I was able to find, Secret Seattle. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a very exhaustive video of the best way to travel and how I choose a place. If you have any more questions, do let me know. Feel free to ask and I'll do my best to reply to them. Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. Cue Teenage Wasteland by Nirvana. Have a good day, everyone. See you in Seattle. Bye-bye.